Well, based on the numbers, I think it's pretty evident that we are.
Windsor-Essex may technically be in the orange zone, but numbers this week have pushed us past the red zone threshold. That's worrying businesses already feeling the pinch. It's something local politicians and labor leaders have been pushing for years. And now single-game sports betting is one step closer to becoming a reality. Our city saw periods of rain today and some more to come, but there's some sunshine expected over the weekend. Colette Kennedy will break down the forecast for us later in the show. I'm Katerina Georgieva. Chris is off tonight. More pandemic restrictions are likely on the way for Windsor-Essex as the virus continues to spread rapidly through our community. Another 42 new COVID-19 cases today, and health officials warn we could be moving into the red zone, and soon. Stacey Janzer is live with us tonight. Stacey, for now we remain in orange, but how close are we to moving up to that next level?
Well, Kat, according to the local health unit's numbers, we are in the red zone. Cases have been in the double digits for 2 weeks. Since Monday, we've had 133 new cases of COVID-19. To be in the provincial red or control level, the weekly incident rate needs to be more than 40 per 100,000 people. Windsor-Essex is at 49. The percentage positivity, more than 2.5, we're at 4. Effective reproduction number needs to be more than 1.2, and the region is at 1.4. But making the decision to move can be a bit more complex than just reading the numbers.
It really depends. Sometimes it's more of that you are being told that this is what is happening based on the numbers, based on their understanding, based on the surrounding regions, and sometimes we are just being told that this is what happened. Even if you have something to say it, but we'll still go ahead with what our recommendation is. Sometimes it's more of an exploration. So if they come back at you and they ask you, well, we're seeing this number, help us understand what's going on because it's different, or it was not what it was a week before, or it was not what we are seeing in other regions. So what exactly is happening in your region?
As we move into red, Stacey, as the numbers suggest that we will, what does it mean for the community?
Well, the move will bring some really tough changes for local businesses. In the last few weeks, restaurants and bars have had to deal with ongoing changes. Few limitations in green, but when we moved to yellow 12 days ago, they could only seat tables of 6 or less. Monday, we moved to orange and restrictions only allowed 50 people inside at a time, seating tables of 4 or less. And when we go to red, only 10 will be allowed inside of a restaurant. So what's becoming weekly changes is adding more pressure to already stressed businesses.
Adjustments that we've had are just really difficult for me from a promotional standpoint. It's very hard to tell people when your hours are changing constantly, you're opening later. Like someone messaged me and thought our last call was 11 still yesterday. So people just can't keep up. It's frustrating because we are following a protocol and we are safe in that situation, and it just keeps getting trimmed back. And for us, it'd be better if they just closed everything, subsidized and supported the staff and the landlords and whoever else they have to support.
Right now, even with the orange, we are still staying the same, like takeout and patio only. We are very thankful that people are trying to support us, and then they come to takeout at least, and then they buy all the coffee gears for their home brewing from us instead of like buying it online or like going to bigger chains.
Restaurants and bars are being held to a very high goal of keeping everything clean and safe, and plexiglass and masks and goggles and gloves and everything to maintain safety. Closing bars and restaurants at 9 p.m. It's really frustrating to see that punishment going out to them when it's not them that are causing it.
There will be other changes when we officially move into red. Live performances are banned. Social gatherings allowed only 5 inside, 25 outdoors. Gyms can only have 10 people inside with equipment. Malls can stay open, but only 10 people are allowed to sit in a food court at one time. Movie theaters and performing arts facilities will also be closed. In the last few weeks, the province has announced changes on Fridays, so We expect the change could come then. And on top of all of these potential changes, the province is asking us to celebrate the holidays only with those that we live with. Kat?
Thanks, Stacey. The CBC's Stacey Janzer reporting live. Now, as those numbers continue to climb, let's take a closer look at them. FW Bagley Public School has 2 new cases, now bringing the total cases there to 43. In addition to the multiple outbreaks that we've been telling you about, there's 1 new outbreak announced at Victoria Manor Supportive Living in Windsor. And 2 more people are in hospital today with COVID-19, 18 of them with 5 in the ICU. And we're learning more about an outbreak in Chatham, Kent that started with positive cases at the Word of Life Church in Blenheim. Health officials are using it as an example of how easily the virus can spread far and wide. But here's how it happened. 21 people tested positive at that church. From there, 6 more household contacts tested positive. That led to 2 more positive cases after a gathering, and that led to another close contact case, plus 1 more household contact case after that. Also from that original church gathering, 3 people test positive in a group living setting. That led to another 2 cases in a different group living setting, and then another separate household contact who tested positive. The final course of transmission starting again back at the church, then spreading to a blood donor clinic where 2 people test positive, and that leads to another positive case from a household contact. In total, 40 people testing positive in 24 households, 2 declared outbreaks, 3 people ending up in hospital, and nearly 500 people in isolation. Ontario's response to the COVID-19 pandemic was hampered by decision-making delays and confusion. It also suffered from poor emergency preparedness and a disorganized public health system. Those are just some of the findings in a new report from the province's Auditor General. Our Queen's Park reporter Mike Crawley has the details.
The Auditor General says Ontario moved more slowly than other provinces to respond to the pandemic earlier this year. And she found as recently as last month, testing backlogs slowed down efforts to contain the second wave of COVID-19.
In a time of crisis, the systems that people needed weren't in place. And we're showing what the consequences of that are.
The report says the government's initial response to COVID-19 was riddled with delays and conflicts and confusion in decision-making. It also reveals the government paid a consulting firm $1.6 million to set up Ontario's COVID command tables. The auditor calls this advisory structure overly cumbersome, with all the top roles filled by senior bureaucrats and political staff.
This structure should have been dominated by public health experts, but was not.
The auditor says the Chief Medical Officer of Health, Dr. David Williams, has not led Ontario's response to the pandemic, and she criticizes Williams for failing to use his full powers to issue health directives quickly and independently.
My hope on this report is people look at it and focus on what needs to be done to go forward. Not to use it as a blame tool, not to be defensive against what's in this report.
Defensive doesn't even begin to describe the government's reaction.
I have some serious problems with this report. This does nothing but undermine our entire health team, and I can't stand for this, and I'll tell you, I won't stand for this.
Today's Auditor General's report is a disappointment and, in many respects, a mischaracterization of the province's pandemic response.
The Premier went so far as attacking the auditor directly.
Don't start pretending you're a doctor or a health professional, because I can tell you, you aren't. Stick with the numbers.
The auditor's mandate is actually more than just counting taxpayer pennies. She's also supposed to figure out whether government programs are effective. In this case, effective at slowing the spread of COVID-19. Mike Crawley, CBC News, Toronto.
In her report, the Auditor General also blasted the province's handling of migrant workers during the pandemic. She criticized the government for not issuing a province-wide order to protect foreign farm workers, but rather a memo which strongly recommended that local health units issue their own directives. Advocacy groups say this reaffirms what they've been saying all along.
that the provincial government, the chief medical officer, has failed to protect the interests of migrant workers. Migrant farm workers were put in a position where they had to fend for themselves during this pandemic, and there was no leadership whatsoever from the provincial government, from the chief medical officer, or for anybody who could have intervened to prevent the spread of this pandemic.
To date, there have been more than 1,200 cases of COVID-19 among farm workers in Windsor-Essex. 2 died because of the virus. The report also compares the response in Ontario to that in BC. There, provincial officials ordered employers to ensure farm workers quarantined had hygienic housing conditions and were provided with medical care. But no such order was ever given in Ontario. Instead, the report says it was left up to local health units to issue their own methods to manage the risk of COVID-19. The federal government will finally introduce long-awaited legislation to legalize single sports betting. It's expected to be tabled in the House of Commons tomorrow, following almost 10 years of calls from multiple politicians. With more, I'm joined live now by the CBC's Sanjay Morrow from outside Caesars Windsor. Sanjay, we've heard about this push for years, but how big of a step forward is this move?
Well, Katerina, this is a major step. From the people I spoke with today, they say this is a huge hurdle that's expected to be crossed. Now, for the Liberals to pass this legislation through, they would need support from another party, but little opposition is expected. That's because never before has there been such support for single sports betting across the political spectrum. Of course, there's NDP MP Brian Massey, a longtime supporter of single sports betting, as long as a 50-yard field goal. On the Conservative side, an MP from that party earlier this year put forward a private member's bill to abolish the ban on single sports betting. And then, of course, on the Liberal side, there's Eric Kuzmerchek, the current Windsor-Tecumseh MP, who has expressed his support for single sports betting, and with it, the full weight of the federal government.
This is a huge day for us here in Windsor-Essex.
We've heard the calls for years, a need to remain competitive with Michigan, an opportunity to take funds away from organized crime, and more money for the local economy.
This is about protecting the 2,500 jobs at Caesars Windsor, and it's also about giving the tourism sector a much-needed boost.
A sector that was slammed due to COVID-19.
It's all about jobs with me. You know, it's not about wins. It's not about anything but jobs. And this, I think, will create jobs.
At Caesars Windsor, the pandemic has allowed for just 10% of its workforce to be called back, not nearly enough to accommodate the increased demand that single sports betting is set to bring to the casino. But the union says it's all about getting ahead of the problem for the day when those COVID restrictions are lifted.
Timing isn't the big issue. We need to get it across the finish line first, and then we worry about them other issues.
Each province will be able to decide what they want to do, and that's the beauty of the legislation. It's the simplicity of it, is it doesn't force a province to do anything.
Massey, the key advocate for legalizing single sports betting, says one of the major goals of this new legislation to allow for people to engage in single sports betting online. But Massey says any concerns with how that could take jobs away at the local level is not up to the federal government to work out.
There could be more weight in putting towards restrictions on the casino front for, versus the shop or the pro line or whatever. They'll have to decide that, but that'll be up for the provincial legislature to decide.
And that's one of the key points Massey expressed to me when I spoke to him today, that this legislation is really about putting the power of regulating single sports betting in the power of individual provinces. And as I said off the top, Katerina, little opposition expected at this point. When I spoke with MP Eric Kuzmerchek today, he tells me that if all goes well tomorrow with tabling this new legislation, that it could be as soon as 3 or 4 months that people in Windsor, but more importantly, people outside of Windsor, could come to this city to engage in single sports betting. Katerina.
Thanks, Sanjay. The CBC's Sanjay Morrow reporting live tonight. Direction from the province today on how to safely celebrate the upcoming holidays. Officials say it will be a different kind of season in order to protect loved ones.
Each of us has a role to play. The safest way for any of us to enjoy the holidays, no matter where we live in the province, is to celebrate with our own households. Doing so is critical if you live in a lockdown region. If you live alone, you can join one other household so you won't be alone for the holidays.
Ford went on to advise people against hosting parties and having large gatherings. He also asked people to follow guidelines for their specific regions. And with the holidays just around the corner and with health officials urging the public to stay close to home, keeping things local during the pandemic holiday is top of mind, both in terms of where and how to celebrate and where to shop. Here's how some groups are encouraging just that.
This is our foodie box, for example. So this showcases 4 different vendors.
A gift box featuring local businesses from across Windsor-Essex. Rachel Vollmer and her sister launched this online store, Local Provisions, to promote local products.
Lauren and I were just, chatting about just all the devastating effects that COVID have had on, small businesses. We've really noticed it a lot. And there's really so many great things that Windsor has to offer in terms of small retailers.
They've got a foodie box, caffeine box, a self-care box.
I mean, I feel like there's no wrong way to shop small. It's just making sure that you support your community.
This as COVID restrictions continue to increase, making it tougher on businesses. This Kingsville coffee shop is grateful to be included.
It's pretty great. So Kingsville, it's a small town. There's a lot going on here, lots of food happening. But not as big of a market as Windsor is, so it's nice to be part of that.
Tourism Windsor-Essex Peely Island is also urging folks to keep it local. The holiday guide on their website lets people know how to support local businesses with their wallets, and many locals are already keeping this in mind.
I'll support small businesses more than big businesses.
I try to support the smaller businesses. They're the ones that are hurting the most. Walmart and Costco, they've been open, people have been going in, but the small stores have really been struggling.
Actually, I think in the pandemic, we should stay at home. That's a priority, I think. So I recommend online shopping is the best.
Keeping it local is also the message from health officials in terms of where to celebrate the holidays.
Christmas is not going to be having any kind of large group interactions for sure. Even with family, you got to really think twice, avoid non-essential travel, keep to your current household contacts as much as possible.
You shouldn't be leaving, right?
The local tourism organization's guide also features safe events throughout the region, both in person and online.
So events that people can do virtually, there's workshops you can do virtually as well. So ways that you can still have holiday fun from home, really trying to get you in the spirit, but doing it safely and with your unit.
Ultimately, the hope is to mark the holidays safely while investing in a struggling local economy.
Keeping those dollars local important. 64% of every dollar spent stays in the market because they're giving it back to other small businesses. And I think that's important. And showing that support for your neighbors and friends.
If you can, and if you can afford to do it, try and skip Amazon and, buy from your local store so that they can stick around.
And you can read more about this story online. Just go to cbc.ca/Windsor. Lots of raindrops today and more drizzle expected tomorrow. But there is some sunshine ahead. Colette Kennedy will bring us the full forecast when we come back. take a look at this. The view from Detroit at night and those otherworldly lights on the horizon, well, that's Leamington. The colorful haze from greenhouses that's been called light pollution by many looks even more dramatic from across the river. And while we're used to the lights over here, they prove to be a bit of a mystery for some Detroiters.
Very own Southern Lights, sometimes purple, other times orange, and it recently caught the attention of our eagle-eyed night cam. He went to investigate and joins us from the riverfront. Tim.
Windsor looking as magnificent as ever across the Detroit River, but as you pan left past Casino Windsor, it looks like an eternal sunset. What is that? It can't be the sun, that's looking south. It's not the moon. No, the moon's up here somewhere. There's the moon. And like I say, the sun sets in the west. We did some digging tonight. Found out exactly what's going on. Right over there.
Colette Kennedy joins us now with weather, but before we get to that, I just have to talk about those lights because I remember the first time that I saw them when I first moved to Windsor-Essex, and I thought, what on earth is that? My goodness, so I can only imagine from Detroit, if they have no idea what's going on, what they must have been thinking.
And I think that's the question, right? What on earth is when you don't know, is it looks like it's not something earthly, right? It looks like it could be extraterrestrial or something that's hovering there. So that's very cool. I think it's neat too that, you know, give them a little mystery to kind of figure out there. So let's not leave the mystery in the weather, I guess, here. If we could try and break it down for you, what's going on. So our current temperatures, you can see how mild they are. We've got 9 all around. We're talking Sarnia, Chatham, Kent, Windsor, Leamington as well. There's that band of much heavier stuff along that warm front. As that continues to track towards the north and east, ahead of it is some much cooler air, and so there's going to be areas along that band where once it gets to eastern Ontario, there's a little bit of freezing rain risk there. But for now, we're just looking at kind of a wave, and then you get into it backing off a bit and some drizzle, but we're still into this as it goes by us, this system working its way through, and it's not quite done with us yet. So that's not the end of it. We're still going to see more into the evening and overnight hours. I'll just kind of show you what's happening. Now, this is well off into eastern Ontario, as I say, towards the nation's capital for tonight, that freezing rain warning. But a little bit closer to home, some of the fog, dense fog, and an advisory there because of what's developed as the system is moving in. And not a lot of mixing of the atmosphere through here. So if you are going to be on the roadways this evening or doing any traveling, just know that in some cases it is dense, meaning visibility dropping close to zero. But we get rid of that next batch. It is going to be with us, like I said, kind of off and on through the overnight. Then into tomorrow, there's still a lot of cloud cover and even a bit of drizzle still kind of possible. So I'm hoping we get some sunny breaks into the later afternoon. The other model actually wants to do that, but you can see how thick this cloud deck is looking. So it could be that it's not into Friday till we get there. In terms of the amounts, we've still got some additional to come in, kind of 5 to 10 millimeters through our overnight. The temperatures sort of hanging where they are right now, and then tomorrow we may gain a degree or two. You can see here wanting to give some sunny breaks to come in, and let's hope for that. But again, it's there's pretty extensive the cloud cover we're seeing. So that's the 11, and Thursday night still mild, so above freezing, 3 degrees. But look at Friday, 7. It's the overnights that start to get cool. We should be dry through the weekend, Kat. The next system coming the beginning of next week, and with some cooler air, that could turn into a mix and not just rain with that one.
No mystery there. We know what to expect. Thank you so much, Colette. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Now, when we come back, a message from the U.S. President-elect on coming together and fighting COVID-19, just as Americans get ready to celebrate Thanksgiving. Stay with us. U.S. President-elect Joe Biden delivered a Thanksgiving address to the American people today. He called 2020 a tough year with a divisive election and a pandemic that has physically and emotionally drained many people. But he says the end is in sight, and this is the time to unite and tackle COVID-19.
I know the country has grown weary of the fight. We need to remember, we're at war with the virus, not with one another, not with each other. This is the moment where we need to steel our spines, redouble our efforts, and recommit ourselves to the fight. Let's remember, we're all in this together.
Biden recognized that it's hard to give up traditions, but he's calling on Americans to stay home and celebrate Thanksgiving in small groups. That is it for CBC Windsor News. Don't forget, for news anytime, you can go to our website at cbc.ca/Windsor, and we're on social media as well, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. The Rick Mercer Report is up next. Have yourselves a wonderful night.